Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Lalit Ambika, Associate Professor and Head Department of English, Tiruthanganara College. I am here to introduce you to William Shakespeare's play, Macbeth. Before we move on to that play, let me give you a brief introduction about William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was born on April 23rd, 1564, and in a place called Stratford-upon-Avon. And he died on the same day. That itself seems to be very unique, on April 23rd, 1660. Now, to tell you about William Shakespeare, he was a playwright, an actor, and a poet. To tell you more about his literary work, in all he has written 38 plays, 154 sonnets, and apart from that, 2 long narrative poems. Now he has written history plays, comedies, tragedies, and even semi-comedies and all that. Like it's called tragicomedies and so on. Now the play that I have selected, Macbeth, it's one of the one of the major tragedy which he has written and which has grabbed the attention of people, of audience, of book lovers, globally, I should tell you. Now, Macbeth. Now, I should tell you, like William Shakespeare, where did he go for his sources? Where did he get his raw material for his plays? His main source was Holinshed's Chronicles. Holinshed's Chronicles was one of the main source of most of his plays, and he depended on that for his themes. You can see his works. They cover the themes of love, mortality, beauty, futility of life, etc. So these themes are considered to be universal in nature, and that is why his plays are cherished and relished by people all over the globe. And actually these plays were written somewhere in 16th, 17th century. But even to this day, his plays, they have the freshness which the other writers never enjoyed. The plays of other writers or the works of other writers never enjoyed or never can enjoy. Now let's go to the play as such, Macbeth. Now Macbeth is, before I go on to the play, let us have a gist of Shakespeare once again. Like as I told you, he was born on April 23rd, 1564 in a place called Stratford-upon-Avon and in England, and he died on the same day, as I said, in the year 1616 in the same place. He was a poet, dramatist and an actor, and he was called the English national poet. Apart from that, he was also known as the English bard. Bard means poet. Now, he is considered by many to be the greatest dramatist. And you know, like one of his contemporary named Ben Jonson, he just passed a remark about William Shakespeare, which seems to be true. Ben Jonson said this about Shakespeare. Shakespeare is not of an age, he is of all ages. And I can tell you, this has been proved to the letter because of his plays. Yes. And you can see Shakespeare, he occupies a unique place in world literature. Then other poets like Homer, Dante, the writers like Leo Tolstoy, Charles Dickens, though they transcended national barriers, still their plays are not cherished as much as Shakespeare's. Now, Shakespearean tragedy, why are they so popular? They are so popular because his themes, they explore, those tragedies, they explore human nature, and they focus on the fatal flaws of the protagonist. Okay, and they involve the themes of love, power, and mortality of life, fate, and all that. And you can see the key elements. They include the tragic hero's flaws, and internal. You can see the heroes going through the internal and external conflicts, and you can see there's a struggle between free will and fate. Yes. And these, you have even other plays like Romeo, Juliet, and others. And to tell you about the other main tragedies, they are namely Hamlet, Othello, and King Lear. And Macbeth seems to be the shortest of his tragedies. It seems to be the shortest of his tragedies. Now the play, I mean this is, Macbeth's play. You can see that's something unique about this play. It has no subplots, no kind of diversions at all. It just focuses on Macbeth's life, how he seizes power, and the subsequent destruction that he faces and all that. All this happens because of his blind ambition. His ambition and the unchecked ambition, I should say. And you can see now this play that who is Macbeth as such. He is a brave general. He is a brave Scottish general, and you can see like he's so loyal to his country. Yes, and you can see like one day when he returns from the war, he happens to hear the prophecies of the witches. They prophesy that like Macbeth will one day be the Thane of Hodder, and later on he will be the king himself. This spurs his ambition. The seed of ambition is already in his mind, and this catches fire. And you can see he's also goaded by his wife, his ambitious wife, Lady Macbeth, and all that leads to the destruction in his life. Yes, he is consumed by latent ambition, and that he's spurred to violence because of his wife, Lady Macbeth. And finally, what happens? He doesn't hesitate to murder King Duncan, and finally he becomes a king himself. And then you can see people who involve in evil deeds, their conscience can never be silent. You can't silence a conscience for long. His conscience is racked with guilt and paranoia, and finally he commits further murders also. He gets rid of his close friend named Banquo. Yes, and he even destroys the family of Macduff in order to he wants to do away with all his enemies, to retain and to be stable in that power which he has usurped from King Duncan. And then you can see the violence perpetrated by the power-hungry couple. What does it lead to? It leads to their insanity. You can see Lady Macbeth, she was so ambitious, but what happens finally? She is goaded by feelings of guilt, and then you can see all the sleepwalking and scenes coming. She begins to sleepwalk, and you can see her, she gets obsessed by hand washing. She keeps on washing her hands. Why? She can see the blood stains on her hand. Initially, when when she did the deed, she was very courageous, and she thought she can overcome all these fine feelings. And she said a little water can rub away the stains of blood. But later on, even when there is no blood on her hands, the stains have disappeared from her hands. Still, she seems to have hallucinations, and finally she becomes insane and she commits suicide. Yeah, all this tragedy happens. So Shakespeare's Macbeth, it's a story of ambition, it's a story of power, and this is a timeless exploration of unchecked ambition. Ambition is good, but when it is unchecked, it can prove fatal. Excuse me. And you can see the haunting consequences of this murderous desire in Shakespeare's tragedy. Macbeth is called the darkest tragedy of all the others when compared to other tragedies. Now you can see this prophecy. Actually, this tragedy was sparked because of the prophecies made by the witches. The three witches, they meet Macbeth and Banquo when they are returning from the battle. Okay? And what do? They prophesy that he will be the Thane of Hodder and later on the King of Scotland. And when Macbeth's promotion was immediate, immediately he wanted the rest of the prophecy to be true. He wanted to fulfill the rest of the prophecy. Okay, and that ignites a dangerous flame of ambition within him. And you can see the witches, they also promised Banquo something. What do they promise? They promise that Banquo might not be the king, but his descendants will beget, he will beget kings. His descendants will become kings. Excuse me. Now actually the play, you can see the opening of the play seems to be very gloomy. Okay? It opens on a blasted heat, and there you can see the three witches, they are planning the plays and the venue, like where to meet Macbeth. And finally they arrange to meet Macbeth, and then they see him, and that is how they see him coming back with his clothes and Banquo after the battle. Okay? they greet him and then they pronounce him. Actually, they address him as Thane of Cawdor, and he wonders and he says, yes, very soon you are going to be Thane of Cawdor and later on the king. And then after making these prophecies and after making the prophecy to Banquo, they simply disappear into thin air. And immediately after this, a messenger named Ross comes and he says, King Duncan has given you a promotion. He has made you the Thane of Cawdor. And then you can see there's no seeing back. Macbeth decides that the rest of the prophecy has to come true. It has to be fulfilled. Okay? And then you can see Macbeth writes a letter to his wife. He informs his wife of all the happenings, and immediately she also begins to hatch a plan of getting rid of the king. Actually, in those days, it was believed that kings were selected or chosen by gods. And if you're going to depose a king, or if you're going to kill a king, it's like almost invoking the God's wrath on you. It's like committing a sin against God. So regicide in those days was considered to be a greatest sin, which Macbeth decides to carry out because his wife keeps goading him. And you can't blame Lady Macbeth alone for this crime, because the seed of ambition, unchecked ambition, you can find it in the character or the personality of Macbeth himself. Yes, and you can see after that, the couple, they decide to kill, they decide to assassin Macbeth in his sleep. Like Macbeth wants to, they assassin King Duncan in his sleep. King Duncan wants to honor Macbeth because of his victory in the battle. And he actually decides to visit the palace of, he decides to visit the castle of Macbeth in Inverness, and that time was chosen by Lady Macbeth to assassinate him. And then you can see that, Macbeth goes inside the chamber wherein you can find King Duncan asleep, and he commits a murder. He commits a murder, but he runs out with that blood-stained dagger, and Lady Macbeth wonders how he's rushed out of the room with that blood-stained dagger. And you can see Macbeth in his real form. He says, I don't dare to go back and to enter the chamber where King Duncan was murdered. He doesn't have the guts. He himself has committed the murder, but he doesn't have the guts doesn't have the nerve to go back to the chamber, to leave the dagger there. And it is Lady Macbeth who takes a blood-stained dagger to the room and she replaces it there. And what does she do? She even stains the drugged guards to blame them for the murder. And the next day you can see Macbeth, the nobleman, he arrives the next day to take back the king. Okay, when he finds the dead king in the chamber, and immediately Macbeth, he kills all the guards who were in the king's chamber, blaming them for the heinous act. Okay, but Macbeth is not fooled by all this, and the king's sons, that is Malcolm and Donalbain, they flee from this place because they knew the conspirators are around them. Okay, so they flee to England for safety. And you can see Macbeth, he crowns himself the King of Scotland, but gradually his guilt and his fear and all that turns him to a tyrant, and he starts his tyrannical rule in Scotland. Okay, and then you can see, and he always has an eye on Banquo, and he thinks of the prophecy made by the witches for Banquo. Banquo will not be the king, but he will beget kings. That is, his descendants will become king. So immediately there again you can see Macbeth becomes jealous, and he is, why should Banquo's descendants become kings? His progeny only should become kings. And so now he decides to even do away with his close friend, Banquo, and he sends assassins to murder Banquo and his son. But son manages to escape, but Banquo is killed. And later on, he is haunted. You can see that, Macbeth is haunted by Banquo's ghost. He begins to have hallucination. He sees the ghost of Banquo, at the big dinner feast, that he provides for all his people. And then you can see immediately Lady Macbeth seems to be very strong. She wants Macbeth to be very normal at the feast, and she manages the situation, and then finally you can see that Macbeth still feels very insecure of the whole situation, and then again he goes to meet the witches to get some reassurance, and the witches, this time they say, no man can harm you, no man of woman born can harm you, and also says, see, your means you can never be defeated unless and until the Birnam Woods moves to Dunsink Hill. Dunsink Hill is a place where he has his palace, his castle, and so you can see that. So he seems to be a little reassured that no man of woman born can murder me, means I can never be defeated. I am invincible. That kind of feeling and confidence comes into Macbeth. Okay, he takes more comfort from the predictions made by the witches this time, that none born of woman can harm him, and he can never be defeated until the Birnam Woods moves towards Dunsink Hill. Anyhow, he wants to kill all his enemies. He wants to do away with all his enemies. And finally, he also, in England, what happens is he even like in Scotland, he wants to kill even Macduff. But Macduff also flees along with Malcolm to England. And so what he does, he destroys, he kills the family of Macduff, which includes Macduff's wife and children. Okay, and then slowly you can see Macbeth is, disintegrating. His mind is almost disintegrating. He feels insecurity. His feelings of insecurity keeps increasing, and finally you can see that he also happens to hear the news that Lady Macbeth committed suicide. Okay, after a long session, long scenes of sleepwalking and hand washing and all that. And so Lady Macbeth she also committed suicide, and finally Macbeth is ready. He's almost ready to face a battle, but at that time you can see Macbeth, he gathers an army. Along with Malcolm and Donalbain, and he comes to Scotland to attack Macbeth. And Macbeth is prepared for the whole thing. And as he is attacking, he is having a sword fight with Macduff, and immediately Macduff tells, I am not a woman born. Okay, actually I was not born in a normal way. I was delivered, by cesarean section, and then there Macduff kills Macbeth, and finally he understands. He also sees before that an army of people with all that camouflage of branches. They move towards Scotland. So he understands everything has been futile. And anyhow, Macbeth is killed by Macduff, and finally Macduff takes the beheaded head to Malcolm, and finally Malcolm becomes the successor. He becomes the king of Scotland, and he restores Scotland with peace and tranquility. There it is.